Hello, and welcome to Down the Bunker. My name is James Merritt, and today I'm joined by the brilliant and very talented Lisa Burton. Lisa, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, James. Nice to be here. Finally.
It's been a while. It's taken some time, but I'm very grateful for you to come online. So can we start off? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I guess. So where to start? So career-wise,
Yeah.
I started my career in law, very quickly transitioned to tech. I don't know why, really. I always wanted to be a barrister, but yeah, I didn't really have the confidence, I think it's truthful to say, back then. So, but I had a knack for kind of dealing with tech issues back in the day. So I did study, I took some courses in understanding, software languages and databases and stuff like that. So that was quite interesting. And then at the law firm I was working at then, well, actually the first law firm I worked at, without really sort of planning it, we just by standardizing some of their processes and their pleadings, their paper, processes and people processes, we upped their legal aid income by about 50%. So that was quite fun. That was a fun project. And then in my city law firm, Bates Wells, Barlow, Lyde and Gilbert, which became Clyde and Co., I was invited to be part of the IT committee, and we rolled out one of the first IBM legal platforms, and I was responsible for writing and delivering all of the training to the lawyers, including some very scary partners back then. And then from there, I was headhunted. I was very lucky to be mentored in my early days by Richard Susskind, Professor Richard Susskind, who of course has written all the AI books for lawyers. I'm deeply grateful to Richard to this day for that. And then I was headhunted to set up what became Legal Technologies. We had two cases. We had an SFO fraud case in Oxford Crown Court and a 6-month trial, and we had a massive construction litigation with Clifford Chance. So again, we set it all up. We had an office above Kentucky Fried Chicken in Baker Street. I'll never forget that because it just stank. It was horrible. But yeah, it was a really interesting early start of the career because, of course, as we digitized paper and we understood the legal implications of making sure that, evidentially whatever we did with the paper would stack up in court, it was really interesting. I started my own business off the back of a really great guy that I worked with at the SFO, a guy called Brian Killingback, who phoned me and said, I need some help on a case going to court. We've got this platform and we've put all our documents in it and it's not really working. And I never forget, I had to go in and say, yeah, you need to get a team of baby barristers in to do all of your statement and exhibit references all over again manually, because there was no silver bullet in the platform to go make it all right. So, and we know that to this day, right, James, that there's no silver bullet.
Really? I could have sworn that there's always a hidden button to find the relevant evidence you need.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hit the button and all your exhibit references and statements will align perfectly. So that was my early career. And then I built and sold LegalInc to Grant Thornton in 2010. That was really, really tough for me personally because I lost my mum and dad within 6 months of each other. At the time we were selling the business, and so that was a very, very difficult period for me. And then from then on, I worked for various consultancies, many of whom will be familiar to many of our colleagues in the industry, helping them build businesses to sell, essentially, which I did with vigor. Worked with some fantastic regulators, great corporates. Volvo is still to this day one of my utterly favourite projects that I've ever worked on, particularly going around the Volvo factory in my yellow hard hat and going on a little tram to see how the Volvo cars were made. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Working with Ofcom, configuring databases for them, prosecuting the first criminal case with Sarah George at the FCA, as she was then. Yeah, wired up the first 9 UK courtrooms. So yeah, and here I am. I mean, I've done lots of different really interesting cases, and latterly in my career have kind of got to grips with the whole Microsoft compliance stack features, which is quite interesting, right? Because 99% of businesses are on Microsoft. So really interested in all of that, and still working in that field. And then I guess to finish up on me outside of that, I'm mum to 2 grown boys who are fantastic. So they're good. They're all good. Yeah. And just very grateful really for life.
Well, it sounds like you've had a phenomenal career. We've had, having worked with you a couple of times in the last decade or so, I can say that it's always been a pleasure working with you and learning from you. But let's move into what you're doing now. So what is it that your company, Authentic Legal AI, are doing that you're really excited about?
So I think it's fair to say, so Authentic Legal AI was only incorporated last November. I'm hugely honoured and grateful to work with, my long-term co-director, Tony Cooper, ex-Deloitte partner, BT digital transformation expert. I work with Gerard Frith, who's an AI consultant. He's, entrepreneur in residence at a very well-known law firm. We've got Josh Beavis, that's a name from the past. Hope you're well, Josh Yildirim. Josh Beavis, who is a Microsoft expert as well. We, as you know, have partnered with some fantastic tech platforms, Charles Lavalley's, IG, etc., which you've worked with me on.
Fantastic.
So yeah, Authentic Legal. Well, I guess the aim of the business is twofold. One is to be a critical friend to our clients in devising ways to effectively bridge the gap between the legal compliance function and the IT data AI initiatives that all businesses are driving because they have to, because we live in such a digitized world. And, bridging the gap is something that I've done all my life. I've translated law for techies. I've kind of translated chaos, that is digital chaos, and data chaos for lawyers to understand, where the risks are, where the opportunities are. And I really enjoy that. So that's great. So that's one bit of Authentic Legal Tech. The other bit is we are exploring building our own app, which I know I said I wouldn't mention, but we are in the process of doing that. Can't really talk about it because we're not that far down the line, but we are, that is a big part of who we want to be and become. Okay. If it's of value to our clients, if it isn't going to be of value to anyone, James, then I'm not in the business to develop tech for the sake of it. I think that's stupid, frankly, because it never works. If we can derive real value for our clients from developing, AI, then great. So that's why I'm not able really, or don't really want to talk about it, because we haven't tested it yet thoroughly to the point that I can say, yes, this is going to help. This is going to really work. So, yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, you've worked in eDiscovery, say, 15, 20 years?
You're being ever so sweet. Yeah. Bit longer than 20 years, James.
Well, okay. So where would you say your preference lies within, because obviously EDRM is huge. I know when I've worked with you specialise on the information governance space. Would you say that's probably where you're best suited, or be more full EDRM? Where would you say you sort of sit now?
Yeah, I think, definitely InfoGov, because I feel like information governance drives absolutely everything. You have to start with the data at source. And, it sounds a bit corny to say this, but I'm genuinely all about the truth in data. I think the test for me, having been in court and many times where judges have said, well, how is this data being mined? How's it being processed? Who's handled it, who's reviewed it, who's tagged it, having that knowledge, that granular knowledge around, having a corpus of data at the beginning of whatever you're doing, whether it's putting in a data protection framework or it's helping, around ethical use of AI, or whether it's for a discovery exercise or whether it's a data quality and control exercise. It all starts at source, wherever source might be, So for me, yeah, I'd say that's probably where my strength lies. And then I think that as you move right through the EDRM model, I think, we've got some amazing technologies, and I've worked with brilliant legal teams. I worked with a multilingual review team earlier this year, to do a very small but global DSAR request. So I had the great fortune of working with fun Italian, Spanish, Portuguese lawyers. It was brilliant. So yeah. through
Excellent.
our good friend Toby at Rolf Berriman.
Experiment.
So yeah, throwing a hello to Toby. But yeah, so information governance, I would say, is my strongest point.
How do you think then the sort of adoption of all the Gen AI pieces is really going to affect the information governance? Well, just any data, I guess. How is it causing problems, and how are you helping resolve those?
Yeah, so good question. So I mean, I feel like a bit like a well, I always say, and I say this on LinkedIn every time I post something, that AI should serve humans, not the other way around. And in fact, there's so much opportunity for AI to augment cybercrime and stuff like that. So I think having, proper AI governance is critical. And because AI relies so much on that source data that I mentioned before, if people don't know the quality of that source data, or it's not well governed, then they're at risk straight away of using that to generate any AI outcomes. So yeah, I think having human in the loop, I think having explainability, having transparency around use cases and how you've compiled the data to ready for the AI to, ingest and spit out results is critical. And it's getting more complex, actually, because as AI speeds up and the development of AI is becoming, daily more and more used, consistently used, the unstructured data that you and I have typically worked in for our careers, all the email traffic and the chats and the videos and the social media data and all of that stuff that we've literally handled for much of our career, that is the bit that is quite uncontrolled still. So, you've got Microsoft evergreen platforms, Google evergreen CRMs, great platforms, but, unless they are configured, appropriately, then you have to be, well, I think there's so much risk with AI and how it looks at and reads that data and uses it for outputs. And then of course you've got the cyber bits, which expose vulnerabilities and create risk. And although you can have brilliant cyber, sort of the walls of Troy, if you like, are the cyber strength. But the crown jewels are the people and the assets inside, right? Inside the walls.
Mhm.
If you don't actually think about protecting your crown jewels, then it doesn't matter how strong your walls are, right? Because people can get over the walls or build tunnels underneath, and that's what happens. So,
And then you've
yeah,
got your accidental
yeah, exactly.
issues now, where people aren't realizing actually they're giving data away when they're using prompts on active LLMs. And
Yeah,
then there's the case in the States, I think, where they're currently there's a legal hold on all prompts, which means they're going to be held forever and a day until case completes, I guess,
yep,
which leads into privacy. So I mean, it's a huge topic, but I'm always excited to hear people's opinions.
yeah. I think AI is a brilliant opportunity. There are so many fantastic use cases. It's here to stay. But, as per my podcast with my general counsel in the Loop podcast that I've started, one of my GCs said, there's no real bad dogs, it's just bad owners. And that's exactly the right way to think about AI. It's the opportunity to use it ethically is there. It's just making sure that you don't give threat actors the opportunity to then abuse it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just making sure your team are all fully trained and everyone's aware. I mean, it's the same with any technology.
Yeah.
It's the way that it's adopted by companies, and the way that they roll out and train their team.
Yeah, exactly, James. Exactly.
So with that in mind, how do you see the marketplace sort of changing over the next few years?
When you say marketplace, what do you mean? Like in our space,
I
eDiscovery?
guess let's stick to our space where we can.
Yeah, I think the marketplace it's already moved left of EDRM. So, the conversation around information governance, when we worked on our bank project together, if you think of that as a brilliant example, right? You've got backed up data in a cloud. You've got legal holds in place on a Microsoft tenant across multiple users, some of whom have left, some of who are there. You've got whole swathes of SharePoint sites that are, named as a group name, not by individuals, etc. Right. So all of those challenges we faced. Had they done a lift and shift, which we would have done traditionally using forensic collection methods, and sent that to their law firm, I think the cost would have been, well, astronomical is an understatement, right? I think you'd agree with that. So I think what we did by deploying, 4IG in that instance to govern the information before it went to the law firm is definitely the way things will go. So I'm talking to another, financial institution, and they want to look at things like logical data mapping and data dictionaries. But, my point is, if you don't actually get control of the data that sits beneath those logical data maps, then you just get visibility of something that you can't really trust. So I think the market will have a big focus on InfoGov, and then the discovery piece, that comes out of that then is more trusted and reliable. That makes sense. I do think AI as well is going to speed up being able to search across, swathes and huge, vast amounts of data.
Yeah, if you've got a data lake, because you wonder if you deploy an LLM to search and just to pull, do part of the forensic work for you and pull the data you require for your case.
Exactly. The only thing that I would say about that, and again, I've said this recently as well, is I was asked to create a skip of data, right, from A to B. Get data from A, put it in B, create a skip. That's great, but until you come to search it, and then you're in that under-inclusive, over-inclusive situation where, because none of it is indexed, what bit do you index, right? Do you index, 20%, 30%, 40%? If you index only a percentage of it, then have you missed something critical, or have you indexed too much, and how do you pass it to a much more manageable amount of data? Again, I think there's massive opportunity for AI to improve that process, but I think that, the principles of what we know in discovery and management of data discovery projects still very much apply. And I'm a great believer in sampling, by the way. I would always say, if you're going to do something like that, then sample, make sure you've got your theory right, and prove the test case before you've got the confidence then to roll it out widely.
I suppose with our industry as well, we're assuming that obviously that all the data that an organisation would have is within a large environment. It doesn't take into account their offline data and offline storage, which then needs to be taken into account.
Yeah.
So the traditional role of the forensic practitioner is still going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And also, for very large corporates, I mean, sometimes logs are only stored for a certain amount of time. So I was working with a client recently where, across 4 days, they had something like, well, I can't even remember, but it was millions and millions of records in a log. So, when you kind of combine that with all the other risks and all the other challenges that we've talked about already, it's a big issue, right? And I think that is where our skill set comes in most, James, because we understand, having been there early on in the whole kind of digitization of information sphere, that whole industry, how we started. I think having that granular level of understanding really can be helpful in scenarios where you've got so much data, you just don't know where to start.
But at least if an organisation knows what data they have, that is a start. It's those that don't know what data they have.
Yeah. But I honestly believe that the majority of organisations don't really know what data they have because, and it's completely understandable, people don't delete, right? There's, that big fear, better keep it just in case. CRM, we haven't done business with these contacts, but we'll just keep them on our database. Retention deletion policies, the cost of storing data that is no longer useful is huge. So I kind of get it, but also whilst you're storing all of that historical data, the speed with which new data is being created, and then you get into real complexity. So yeah, it's a brilliant challenge, right, to have, but
It gives you an interesting role to your job, right?
yeah,
Keeps us
exactly.
employed, keeps us busy.
It does, James, exactly.
So what have you taken away from all the different firms and different roles that you've got, and how are you applying that knowledge in your current role?
Do you know what? I would say one key thing, and that is people. I love people. I love working with people, and people can be your greatest challenge, right? You can have perfect tech, you can have, you can have a lot of opportunity, but I think people are the key asset, and also the biggest challenge very often. And yeah, I think working with different people and engaging with them on projects where you can deliver successful outcomes is one of the greatest feelings. The energy behind that, and the service. You if you can really show value in that way, and someone's happy, then happy days. I'm happy. That's what I've learned most, actually. I think it's not about the challenge, it's not about the tech. It's about how you engage your stakeholders and your clients, and how you respect and deal with challenges. I mean, we all know that everyone has their own ideas, everyone has their own success criteria, etc. And I think that's the biggest challenge, but also the biggest reward. So yeah, that's a navigation.
I'd agree with every word you said there. I think, I look back at the cases and the jobs I worked on, the highlights, like personal career and personal and career highlight for me was working on a case in Brazil, and I still regularly keep in contact with the lawyers. It's nearly 11,
Exactly.
12 years ago now. And it's, you do, there's people that stand out across my career that it's nice to be able to keep in touch with, and you hope to
Absolutely.
work with again.
Yeah, precisely. And, you make some really good friends, right, along the way, which
Yeah.
very fortunate. Yeah, I know I have. You're one. We've,
Okay.
we've worked a long time together, haven't we, James? So
We have,
yeah,
yeah. It's been great. And, the last case we worked on was challenging, but rewarding. We got to work on 4IG, which was a great platform, as we've mentioned throughout. It's not just a plug for 4IG this either. It was a really good solution to the problem that we had. The perfect, and I think it worked well. Taking huge amounts of data, reducing it to the relevant information. But then you and I got to, show the clients how good it was.
exactly. Yep.
Outside of work, what is it that you do to let off steam?
Well, first of all, I'm very blessed because I've got loads of amazing, I mean, friends obviously are a big part of my life, and I love cooking and food. So I'd say we're a complete bunch of foodies, but in the nicest possible way. So yeah, love that. I'm really into yoga. I love yoga. I used to do a lot of cycling into the city a while ago, but recently I think, I haven't really been on my bike that much, so I might sell it. So I love my yoga and Pilates, walking. I'm very fortunate because I live in a very green part of North London. I mean, obviously the Arsenal are a massive part of my life, but you know that already. That said, my sons would laugh because I can't even tell you who the team is at the moment, but they are in my heart. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just trying to stay healthy and have fun, basically. Travel, do a bit of, yeah, just I'm interested, in living a good life. And also, I mean, in the past, not so much lately, but I've done some charity work for great charities like the Felix Project, delivering food waste to, you know, people who really need it, schools, underfunded, groups of people who perhaps fall through the social net, the social governance net. And the same with Little Village, helping young mums and babies and young parents and babies, I should say, get set up. That was, that's really, really rewarding. I always think to give a little back is a great thing to do, if it's time or, whatever you can do, really.
I agree, wholeheartedly agree. I try to do a charitable event every year.
Yes.
Being able to give back is very rewarding, but I think it's important
Yeah, it's
especially
more than
while we're
ever now.
privileged enough to be able to. I've certainly seen it as something that I should do every year.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but with that being said, Lisa, you've been brilliant as ever. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Anyone
Jay.
who's listened, thank you for joining us, and please stop by next time. Thank you.